The rain had already been falling for some time by the hour I came within sight of the castle, and it seemed to belong to the evening so completely that I could hardly imagine the sky without it. It was not a wild rain in the way stories sometimes make it, not a violent curtain slashing across the world, but a patient, steady rain, soft and cold and thorough, the kind that settles over stone and grass and wooden carts and woolen cloaks until everything shares the same dim shine. I walked slowly along the muddy road with the sound of water all around me, and ahead, through the gray veil of the weather, the castle rose from the land as though it had been waiting there forever, silent, broad, and calm beneath the darkening clouds. From a distance, the walls did not seem sharp or severe. In the rain, their edges softened. Their stone faces, darkened by wetness, held the last weak light of the evening in a muted way, and the towers above them disappeared now and then behind drifting threads of mist. The banners that might have shown bright color on a dry afternoon hung heavy and damp, moving only a little. Even the shapes of the battlements seemed gentler in such weather. The whole place looked less like a fortress and more like a great shelter, old and dependable, standing against the open fields and the long, empty roads. As I drew nearer, the details emerged one by one, slowly, as if the rain wished me to discover them at its own pace. I could see the ditch outside the wall brimmed with dark water, rippling beneath the drops. I could see narrow window openings, black with shadow. I could see pale lines where water streamed down between the stones, finding ancient paths along the mortar. There was the great gatehouse at the front, larger than I had first thought, its arch deep and solemn, its wooden doors bound in iron. Above it, a few warm points of light glowed from within the chambers built over the entrance, and those small golden lights seen through the rain seemed especially comforting. The road had become soft underfoot. My boots pressed into the mud with a low and yielding sound, and each step asked for a little more patience than the last. Along the roadside, the grass lay flat and silvered with water. A cart track beside the road had turned into two shallow channels filled with brown rainwater, and somewhere not far off I could hear the slow creaking of a wagon axle, though I never saw the wagon itself. Perhaps it had already passed through the gates. Perhaps it was waiting under some stand of trees for the rain to ease, though there was no sign that it would. The evening was settling deeper now, and the weather had a way of drawing all things inward toward hearths and covered stables and kitchens full of steam. The nearer I came to the castle, the more I noticed the life gathered around it, quiet though it was. A pair of figures in wool cloaks moved along the outer wall, heads bent against the rain, carrying some covered bundle between them. A stable boy, no more than a dark shape at first, hurried across the yard beyond the gate opening and vanished under an overhang. Somewhere above, from a slit of window, a little ribbon of smoke drifted sideways and disappeared into the damp air. It was not the busy life of market day or festival day. It was the inward life of a wet evening, when every task becomes slower and softer, and everything unnecessary is put aside until morning. Thunder moved somewhere in the distance, but even that sound seemed tired and low, rolling far across the countryside rather than crashing overhead. It reached the castle walls as a long murmur, the kind of sound one feels in the chest as much as hears in the ear. No one at the gate seemed alarmed by it. The rain had likely gone on since afternoon, perhaps longer, and all within the castle would have settled into the rhythm of it by now. Fires would already be burning in the great hall and in the kitchens. Candles would be lit in private chambers. Wet cloaks would be hung close to warmth. boots set near thresholds, and simple meals served from steaming pots. The storm, however long it lasted, would be received as part of the night. I reached the outer approach and paused for a moment, not out of fear, but because the castle gate in the rain invited a kind of stillness. Before me stood the heavy doors, partly open beneath the deep stone archway. The wood was dark with water and marked by long use, by scratches, dents, and the dull polish of many hands. Iron straps crossed the surface in thick bands, beaded now with droplets that caught the faint light. Above the doors hung the portcullis, raised for the moment, its iron teeth black and motionless. Water dripped from the grooves where it would descend if needed, and from the stones overhead, the rain fell in a more concentrated line, like a fringe of silver threads. Just inside the arch, a lantern burned. Its flame shifted in the draft and cast a warm, uncertain circle over the wet ground. I could see the puddles there shining amber, disturbed by each drop from the ceiling stones. That lantern light made all the difference. Outside the gate, the world was open, wet, and fading into shadow. Inside, even from a few steps away, there was the suggestion of enclosure, of human order, of walls that held back the weather. One did not need luxury to feel relief at such a threshold. A roof, a fire, dry straw, warm broth, voices kept low by evening. These were enough. A guard stood beneath the shelter of the gatehouse, wrapped in a hooded cloak over his mail and padded tunic. Rain had darkened the edges of his garments, and on one shoulder the water still gathered and fell in slow drops. He carried no air of urgency, only the calm watchfulness of a man accustomed to long hours in every kind of weather. Beside him, leaning against the inner wall, a spear rested within easy reach. The guard's face, partly shadowed, seemed neither stern nor welcoming in any dramatic sense. He merely belonged there, as naturally as the lantern or the gate itself, one more part of the castle's nightly routine. When he spoke, it was in the plain, practical tone that suits a wet evening. Questions were asked, answers given, and all of it seemed carried gently by the hush of the rain. No word needed to be raised. The stone around us absorbed sound, and the water softened whatever remained. Even the usual business of entry felt slower in such conditions, less like inspection and more like the steady turning of a familiar wheel. Travelers came. Gates opened. Cloaks dripped onto rushes or muddy stones. News from the road was exchanged in a few simple phrases. Then the traveler passed within, and the castle folded him into its night. As I waited beneath the arch for those few necessary moments, I became aware of the smells gathered there. Wet wool was strongest, then damp leather, hoarse smoke, and the cold mineral scent of rain on stone. Beneath it all, faint but unmistakable, came the warmth of food from somewhere deeper inside. Perhaps onions softening in a pot, or barley broth, or bread being drawn from an oven in the kitchens below. It was a humble scent, but in that hour it felt richer than any feast. The body knows the comfort of warmth before the mind fully names it. From where I stood, I could glimpse part of the inner yard. The ground there was uneven with puddles, and torchlight touched the edges of the buildings on either side. Timber galleries ran along some walls, with posts darkened by the rain and eaves that released little streams of water. A horse stamped in a stable doorway. A servant crossed from one building to another carrying something under a folded cloth. Above, more lights flickered in narrow windows, and their reflections trembled in the pools below. Nothing was still, exactly, yet nothing hurried. It was a quiet movement, a nighttime movement, everything small and purposeful. The wind shifted slightly then, bringing rain under the arch in a fine spray. It touched my face and hands with a cooling softness. I drew my cloak closer and listened. Somewhere within the castle a door opened and shut with a muffled thud. Somewhere metal rang lightly against metal, perhaps a pot, perhaps tack being hung in the stable. Close by, water dripped steadily from a beam. Farther away, thunder rolled again, lower now, as though moving beyond the hills. The storm was not at its height, and perhaps it never would be. It was simply there, surrounding the castle in a wide circle of darkness and rain, while within the walls the life of the evening continued. At last the brief exchange at the gate was finished, and I was allowed to pass. Crossing that threshold felt less like entering a place of power than entering a place of shelter. The stone above me, the thick wood beside me, the lantern light near my shoulder, the sound of the rain left just behind and above, all of it created a sense of being gathered in. I stepped from the outer world into the inner one, from road to courtyard, from open weather to contained weather, if such a thing can be said. The rain still fell here, of course, but it fell into a lived-in space among walls and stables and kitchens and chambers where every drop was answered by a roof, a drain, a fire, a hand. The courtyard stones were slick beneath my feet, worn by years of use and shining now in the torchlight. To one side, the stable doors stood open, and I could hear the rustle of animals settling for the night, the soft shift of hooves in straw, the quiet snort of a horse made comfortable after the long damp hours. To another side rose the hall, its windows brighter than the rest, their warm light blurred by rain. That was where people would be gathering now, some to eat, some to mend clothing near the fire, some simply to sit on benches and let their cloaks dry while the storm spoke on the roof above. I imagined the low murmur of voices, the glow on wooden tables, the smell of rushes and smoke and bread, and I felt the long road begin to leave my body. Near the wall, a young servant was emptying rainwater from a bucket, carefully and without fuss. Another bent to drag a small cart under cover. Such little acts belonged to castle life just as much as banners and towers did. Stormy nights were met not with speeches but with habits. Latches were checked, animals were fed once more, ashes were banked, doors were barred, water was swept away from thresholds, candles were trimmed, extra wood was brought closer to the hearth. Somewhere above, someone would be closing shutters against the damp. Somewhere below, someone would be laying out simple sleeping places for those not already assigned a chamber. The great stone shell of the castle depended, night by night, on many ordinary hands. I moved farther in, slowly, not wishing to disturb the peace of the place. The rain on the courtyard now sounded different from the rain on the road. There it had seemed lonely, stretched over open fields and puddled tracks. Here it played on many surfaces at once: stone, wood, cloth, water troughs, roof tiles, stable eaves. And so it became a softer music, more layered, almost domestic. The castle did not resist the storm so much as absorb it. The wind was broken by the walls, the rain was caught by roofs and channels, the darkness was answered by flame. It was this, perhaps more than any sign of strength, that made the castle feel enduring. And so my arrival at the gates, in the rain and in the deepening evening, became not a dramatic entrance, but something quieter and far more restful. It was the simple human relief of reaching shelter after weather, of seeing warm light through narrow windows, of hearing calm voices under stone, of knowing that beyond the gatehouse there would be dryness, food, and the steady company of others while the storm passed over the land. I stood for one more moment in the courtyard, letting the sight of the hall and towers settle gently in my mind and listening to the soft conversation of rain, hoof, lantern flame, and distant thunder as the castle, patient and ancient, welcomed the night around us. I moved slowly across the courtyard, leaving behind the open gate and the dim outline of the road beyond. And with each step, the sound of the rain softens, as though the walls themselves are gently holding it at a distance. Ahead of me, the great hall stands with a quiet presence, its heavy door slightly ajar, and from within spills a steady golden light that trembles softly against the wet stone outside. There is no urgency here, no rush to enter, only a calm invitation, as if the hall has been waiting patiently for each person who finds their way through the storm. As I reach the entrance, I pause for a brief moment beneath the overhang, where the rain no longer touches me directly. Water continues to fall from the edge of the roof in slow, even drops, forming a narrow curtain just beyond the threshold. I can hear the change in sound immediately. The hollow echo of rain on stone outside gives way to something fuller, something warmer. Voices drift toward me, low and unhurried, blending with the soft crackle of a fire and the occasional gentle movement of wood against wood. I step inside. The change is quiet, but complete. The air itself feels different, no longer cold and damp, but touched by warmth, carrying with it the scent of burning logs, of cooked grain, of wool drying slowly near the hearth. My cloak, still heavy with rain, begins at once to feel less burdensome, as though the heat of the room has already started to lift the chill from it. Behind me, the storm continues, but it becomes something distant, something that belongs to another space. The great hall opens wide before me, its high wooden beams disappearing into shadow above, darkened by years of smoke and time. Along the length of the room, long tables stretch in simple lines, their surfaces worn smooth by countless meals and quiet conversations. Benches stand beside them, some already occupied, others waiting without any sense of urgency. The floor beneath my feet is layered with rushes, softened here and there by the passing of many steps, and they give off a faint, earthy scent that blends gently with the warmth of the fire. At the far end of the hall, the hearth glows steadily, its flames moving in slow, thoughtful patterns rather than sharp bursts. The fire does not roar. It breathes. Logs settle with soft sounds, embers shift and brighten, and now and then a small spark rises before fading into the air above. Around the hearth, a few figures sit or stand, their faces lit in warm tones, their expressions calm, as if the presence of the fire has quieted whatever the day may have carried with it. I move further inside, my steps unhurried, aware of the gentle rhythm of the room. No one speaks loudly. Conversations flow in soft currents, rising and falling without ever disturbing the peace. A man leans slightly toward another as he speaks, his voice low. A woman adjusts the edge of a cloak near the fire, turning it carefully so that it may dry evenly. Someone places a wooden bowl upon the table with a quiet, solid sound. These small actions, repeated night after night, give the hall its sense of continuity, its feeling of being a place where time moves slowly and without strain. The warmth continues to settle into me, not suddenly, but in a gradual, comforting way. My hands, which had grown stiff from the cold rain, begin to soften. My shoulders ease. Even the steady awareness of the storm outside becomes less pressing, less immediate. Here, within these walls, the night feels contained, held gently between stone and timber and flame. I find a place near one of the tables and rest for a moment, letting my cloak hang loose, allowing the warmth to reach through its damp folds. Nearby, a servant moves quietly, carrying a small jug and a few cups, setting them down without drawing attention. There is no haste in the movement, only a steady care, as though each action is part of a rhythm long understood. The simple presence of food and drink, even before it is touched, adds to the sense of comfort, of quiet completeness. From where I sit, I can see more of the hall as my eyes adjust to the soft light. Along the walls hang a few tapestries, their colors muted in the flicker of firelight, their patterns softened by age. They do not call attention to themselves. They simply exist as part of the space, offering a sense of continuity, of stories long past that now rest quietly in the background. Between them, torches burn in iron holders, their flames steady, adding small points of light that echo the central glow of the hearth. Above, the beams hold the darkness in gentle layers, and somewhere high within that space, I can hear the faint tapping of rain against the roof. It is a softer sound than before, filtered through wood and height, turned into a kind of distant rhythm that blends with the crackling of the fire and the murmur of voices below. The storm has not gone, but it has changed its voice. It no longer surrounds me. It rests above like a faraway companion. A bowl is placed before me, simple and warm, its surface releasing a faint curl of steam into the air. I wrap my hands around it, not yet drinking, just feeling the heat pass into my palms. It is a small moment, but a complete one. The journey through the rain, the sight of the castle walls, the passage through the gate, all of it settles into this quiet pause where warmth replaces cold and stillness replaces motion. Across the hall, someone adjusts a log in the fire, and the flames shift slightly, casting new patterns of light across the room. Shadows move slowly along the walls, stretching and softening, never sharp or sudden. A quiet laugh rises from one of the tables, not loud, not disruptive, but warm and brief, like a gentle ripple across still water. It fades quickly, leaving behind the steady calm that fills the space. Time here does not seem to press forward. It unfolds slowly and evenly, like the fire consuming its wood, like the rain falling beyond the walls. There is no need to measure it. Each moment feels sufficient on its own, complete without effort. The hall does not demand attention, it offers presence. I lean back slightly, allowing myself to rest more fully in the warmth. My cloak, though still damp, feels lighter now. The air carries less of the chill, more of the gentle heat that gathers near the hearth and spreads outward in quiet waves. The sounds of the room settle into a kind of soft harmony. The fire, the voices, the distant rain, the small movements of people at ease. And as I sit there, surrounded by stone and wood and the steady glow of firelight, I feel the simple, enduring comfort of being indoors on a stormy night, where the world outside continues in its quiet unrest, while within these walls everything remains calm, warm, and gently held. I remain seated for a while in the great hall, letting the warmth settle more deeply into my bones, and as the moments pass, I begin to notice how the rhythm of the room slowly shifts. It is not a sudden change, not something marked by any clear signal, but rather a gentle turning, like the slow dimming of daylight behind clouds. The hall, though still filled with soft voices and movement, begins to take on a quieter purpose. Evening is settling fully now, and with it comes the calm routine that carries the castle into the night. The fire continues its steady glow, but someone has added another log, placing it carefully so that the flames may take it without effort. There is a small adjustment, a brief brightening, and then the fire returns to its calm breathing. Around it, those who had been sitting begin to shift slightly, not leaving, but preparing in their own quiet way. Cloaks are turned once more to dry evenly. Hands are warmed and then withdrawn. Small wooden cups are emptied and set aside. Along the tables, the remains of the evening meal are being gathered, not in haste, but with a practiced, almost unspoken understanding. A young servant moves from place to place, lifting bowls, stacking them gently, careful not to disturb those still seated. Another follows with a cloth, wiping the surfaces in slow, even motions, leaving behind a faint sheen where the wood catches the firelight. There is no clatter, no sharp sound, only the soft contact of objects meeting wood, the quiet rhythm of hands at work. The smell of food lingers in the air, warm and comforting, but it begins to fade slightly as the space shifts from meal to rest. In its place comes more of the scent of wood smoke and drying wool. Near the hearth, a pair of boots has been set close to the warmth, their leather darkened by rain, now slowly returning to a softer, lighter tone as the heat reaches them. A cloak hangs nearby, suspended from a simple peg, its edges still dripping faintly onto the rushes below. I rise slowly and walk a little further into the hall, not with any destination in mind, but simply to feel the space as it settles into its evening state. My steps are quiet against the floor, softened by the layers of rushes, and I find that each part of the room holds its own small moment of activity. Near one wall, two figures speak in low voices, their heads close together, their words too soft to carry beyond their shared space. Near another, someone adjusts a bench, pulling it slightly closer to the table before sitting down again, as if preparing for a longer, more restful pause. At the far end, near a side passage, I notice a servant lighting another candle. The flame is drawn gently from an existing one, and as it takes hold, the small pool of light grows, adding another layer to the room's soft illumination. There is care in the movement, a patience that belongs to habit rather than instruction. One by one, such small lights are tended, not to banish the darkness entirely, but to shape it, to make it gentle and familiar. From beyond the hall, through partially open doorways, I can sense other parts of the castle settling into their own routines. There is the faint clink of metal from what might be the kitchen, perhaps pots being cleaned or set aside. There is the distant murmur of voices from a corridor, quickly softened by the thick stone walls. Somewhere above, a door closes with a quiet, solid sound, followed by the muffled step of someone moving across a wooden floor. The storm outside continues, but it has become something woven into the background of everything here. The rain taps steadily against the roof, a soft, continuous pattern that blends with the life inside. Occasionally, a slightly stronger gust of wind presses against the walls, and for a brief moment, the sound deepens, moving through the beams above before fading again into the steady rhythm. No one reacts strongly to it. It is simply part of the night. I move closer to the hearth, drawn again by its warmth, and stand for a moment with my hands extended slightly toward the fire. The heat is even, steady, and it seems to reach not just the surface of the skin, but something deeper, something quieter. Around me, others do the same in their own time, approaching, pausing, then stepping away once the warmth has been gathered. Near the fire, a small space has been cleared where a few simple items are being arranged for the night. A bundle of kindling is placed within easy reach. A small iron tool rests beside the hearth, ready to shift the logs if needed. A bucket of water stands nearby, its surface reflecting the firelight in gentle, trembling patterns. These preparations are not hurried, nor are they announced. They are simply done, as they are done every evening, ensuring that the fire will remain steady through the hours ahead. Further along the wall, I notice a narrow stairway leading upward, its entrance partially shadowed. A figure passes there quietly, carrying a candle, the small flame illuminating only a few steps ahead. The light moves slowly upward, then disappears, leaving the stair once again in darkness. It is a quiet reminder of the many small paths within the castle, each leading to chambers where others are already settling, already preparing for rest. Back in the hall, the number of voices has lessened slightly. Some have left, slipping away without drawing attention, while others remain, seated more comfortably now, their posture relaxed. A man leans back against the wall, his eyes half closed, listening perhaps to the rain, or simply resting in the warmth. Another sits at the table, turning a small object in his hands, slowly, thoughtfully, without urgency. A servant passes near me carrying a folded cloth and pauses briefly to adjust a candle that has begun to burn unevenly. The wick is straightened, the flame steadies, and the servant moves on, leaving the light calm and balanced once more. It is in these small acts that the evening finds its shape, not in grand gestures, but in quiet attention to simple things. I return to my place near the table, sitting once more, and feel how the hall has changed even in this short time. It is the same space, the same walls, the same fire, and yet it feels softer now, more inward. The tasks of the day have been set aside. What remains is a kind of shared stillness, where each person moves at their own pace, guided not by urgency but by habit and comfort. The storm continues its steady presence beyond the walls, and now and then a deeper roll of thunder passes, low and distant, like a slow breath across the hills. Inside, the fire answers with its own quiet voice, and the hall holds both sounds together without conflict. I let my gaze rest on the small movements around me, the shifting of light on the beams above, the gentle rise of steam from a cup left near the hearth, the slow, careful motions of those still tending to the last small tasks of the evening. Everything feels balanced, complete in its simplicity. And as the castle settles further into its night routine, I feel myself becoming part of that rhythm, no longer a traveler arriving from the rain, but simply another quiet presence within these walls, sharing in the calm, steady preparation for the long, gentle hours ahead. After some time in the warmth of the great hall, I feel a quiet pull to move, not out of restlessness, but out of a gentle curiosity to see how the rest of the castle settles into the night. I rise slowly, leaving behind the steady glow of the hearth and the soft murmur of voices, and make my way toward one of the side passages. The transition is subtle. With each step away from the fire, the air cools slightly, and the sounds of the hall soften behind me, becoming distant, like something remembered rather than heard. The passage opens into a narrow stone corridor, its walls thick and pale in the low candlelight. The floor beneath my feet is firmer here, worn smooth by countless footsteps over many years. My steps echo faintly, not sharply, but with a soft, rounded sound that lingers for just a moment before fading into the stillness. The corridor does not feel empty. It feels settled, as though it has already accepted the quiet of the night and holds it gently within its walls. Along the corridor, candles are placed at intervals in simple iron holders, Their flames are small but steady, casting a warm glow that reaches only a short distance before giving way to shadow. The light does not attempt to fill the space completely. Instead, it creates a rhythm of brightness and dimness, guiding the way without hurry. As I walk, each pool of light welcomes me briefly, then releases me back into the softer darkness beyond. The air here carries a different scent from the hall. The warmth of the fire is less present, replaced by the cool mineral smell of stone, faintly touched by the lingering trace of smoke that has traveled through the castle's many spaces. There is also the quiet presence of dampness, not unpleasant, but natural, as though the walls themselves remember the rain outside and hold a softened echo of it within. I pass a doorway, partially open, and glance inside. The room beyond is simple, lit by a single candle. A wooden chest rests against one wall, and a narrow bed stands near another, its blanket folded neatly. No one is there at the moment, but the space feels lived in, gently ordered, as if its occupant has only stepped away for a short while. I move on without lingering, letting the quiet of the corridor guide me further. Somewhere above, faintly, I hear the rain again. It taps softly against the upper stones and wooden beams, its sound carried down through the structure in a muted, steady rhythm. Here in the corridor, it feels even more distant than before, like a memory of sound rather than its full presence. Now and then, a slightly stronger gust of wind presses against the outer walls, and the air shifts almost imperceptibly, as though the castle itself is breathing slowly in response. Further along, the corridor turns gently, and with the turn, the light changes. A candle placed near the corner flickers slightly, responding to a faint draft, and the shadows move along the wall in slow, wavering patterns. I pause for a moment, watching the way the light settles again, becoming steady once more. There is something deeply calming in this small, quiet movement, in the way the flame finds its balance without effort. A figure passes me then, moving in the opposite direction. They carry a candle, held carefully in one hand, and their steps are soft, measured. We do not speak. There is no need. A simple nod, a quiet acknowledgement, and they continue on, their light moving away, gradually becoming smaller until it disappears around the bend. The corridor returns to its stillness, unchanged, undisturbed. I continue walking, my hand brushing lightly against the stone wall as I go. The surface is cool and slightly uneven, shaped by time more than by any deliberate design. It feels solid, reassuring in its presence, as though it has held this space through countless nights like this one, through storms and calm evenings alike. At another point along the corridor, a narrow window opening appears, set deep into the wall. I step closer and look out. The view is limited, framed tightly by stone, but beyond it, I can see the faint movement of rain in the darkness, illuminated now and then by a distant flash of lightning far beyond the hills. The light is soft, not sudden, and it fades quickly, leaving the night as it was before. The glass, if there is any, is thick and imperfect, blurring the shapes outside, turning them into something gentle and indistinct. I move away from the window and continue on, aware now of how the castle holds many such quiet spaces, each one slightly different, yet all sharing the same calm presence. Some corridors are wider, some narrower. Some lead upward by worn stone steps, others downward toward unseen chambers. Each carries its own small pattern of light and shadow, its own faint echoes, its own stillness. As I pass another doorway, I hear a soft sound from within, a quiet movement, perhaps someone settling into rest or adjusting a blanket or placing an object carefully on a wooden surface. The sound is brief and gentle, and it fades quickly, leaving the corridor as silent as before. It is a reminder that though the castle grows quiet, it is never entirely still. Life continues in small, almost hidden ways, each person moving through their own evening routine. The further I walk, the more the sense of time seems to loosen. There is no urgency here, no need to reach a destination. The corridors invite a slower pace, a quiet awareness of each step, each breath, each small shift of light. Even the sound of my own movement becomes part of the calm, blending into the soft echoes and the distant rhythm of the rain. Eventually, I come to a small alcove where a bench has been set against the wall. It is simple, worn smooth by use, and positioned beneath a candle whose light falls gently across its surface. I sit for a moment, resting in the stillness, feeling the coolness of the stone nearby and the faint warmth of the candle above. The air is quiet, the kind of quiet that does not press in, but opens outward, allowing the mind to settle without effort. From here, I can hear faint traces of the great hall again, carried through the passages, just a soft murmur, barely more than a suggestion of voices and fire. It reminds me that the warmth and life of that space still exist, even as these corridors hold their own quiet presence. I remain there for a little while, listening, breathing slowly, letting the calm of the stone walls and the steady rhythm of the night settle around me. The castle, in all its thickness and age, feels less like a structure and more like a sheltering presence, holding within it many small, peaceful moments like this one. And when I rise again to continue walking, I do so without hurry, following the gentle curve of the corridor, guided by the soft light of candles and the quiet, enduring stillness that fills these ancient stone paths. I follow one of the quieter corridors as it turns gently away from the wider passages, and after a few more unhurried steps, I come to a wooden door set deep within the stone wall. It is not large, nor decorated in any elaborate way, but it holds a quiet sense of purpose, like many things within the castle. A soft line of light rests beneath it, warm and steady, suggesting a space already settled into the evening. I pause for a moment, listening. There is no movement from within, only a stillness that feels calm rather than empty. Gently, I push the door open. The chamber welcomes me with a soft glow of candlelight. The air inside is warmer than the corridor, though not as warm as the great hall, and it carries a faint mixture of scents, melted wax, wool, and the subtle trace of wood smoke that has found its way even here. It is a small space, but it feels complete, arranged with quiet care rather than abundance. A single candle rests upon a wooden table near the wall, its flame steady, casting a golden circle that reaches across the surface and climbs partway up the stone behind it. The walls, though rough in texture, seem softened by the light, their edges less defined, their presence gentle rather than imposing. Shadows gather in the corners, but they are not deep or unsettling. They simply exist, balanced by the warmth of the flame. I step inside and close the door behind me, and at once the sounds of the castle grow more distant. The soft murmur of voices, the faint echo of footsteps, even the steady presence of the rain, all become quieter, as though wrapped in layers of stone. What remains is a kind of contained silence, one that feels steady and restful. The furnishings are simple. A narrow bed stands along one wall, its wooden frame worn smooth by time. its blanket folded neatly, inviting rest without any need for excess. Nearby, a small chest sits closed, its surface marked by years of use. A stool rests beside the table, slightly angled, as though it has just been used and gently set aside. I move toward the table and rest my hand lightly upon its surface. The wood is cool but not cold, and it holds a faint warmth from the candle nearby. The flame flickers just slightly as I pass, responding to the small shift in air, then settles again into a calm, steady burn. The light it casts moves gently across the room, touching the bed, the chest, the floor, each object receiving just enough to be seen without effort. I remove my cloak and hang it carefully on a simple peg fixed into the wall. The fabric, still damp from the rain, feels heavier than before. But here, in the quiet warmth of the chamber, it begins to lose that weight. A small drop of water falls from its edge onto the floor, darkening the stone briefly before blending into the surface. Sitting on the stool, I allow myself to rest more fully. The quiet here is different from the quiet of the corridors. It is closer, more personal, shaped by the boundaries of the room. There is no need to move carefully, no need to listen for passing footsteps. The space holds itself gently, allowing for stillness without awareness of anything beyond it. The candle continues to burn with a soft, unwavering light. Its flame leans slightly now and then, but never struggles. Melted wax gathers slowly at its base, forming small, quiet shapes that change over time. The rhythm of its burning becomes something easy to follow, a slow and natural passage of moments. I notice the bed more clearly now, the way the blanket has been laid with simple care, the pillow resting slightly indented, as though it remembers the shape of rest. There is no decoration, no unnecessary detail, only what is needed for comfort. The simplicity itself feels calming, as though it leaves space for the mind to settle without distraction. From beyond the walls, the storm remains present, but softened. I can hear the rain faintly, a distant tapping that blends with the quiet of the room. Occasionally, the wind presses lightly against the structure, and the sound shifts just enough to be noticed before returning to its steady pattern. It feels far away now, no longer something that surrounds, but something that passes gently beyond. I lean slightly forward, resting my arms on the table, and let my gaze settle on the flame. There is a quiet steadiness in watching it, in observing the way it moves without hurry, the way it holds its shape even as it changes. Time here feels slower, not stretched, but eased, as though each moment has been given more space to exist. The chamber does not ask for anything. It offers only presence, warmth, light, stillness. Outside, the castle continues its quiet routines, its corridors holding soft footsteps, its hall glowing with firelight. But here, all of that feels gently removed, as though this small room exists slightly apart, a place where the night can be experienced in its simplest form. I take a slow breath, noticing how the air feels calmer, how the weight of the journey and the sound of the rain have settled into something softer, something easier to carry. The body, once cold and tense from the storm, now feels supported, at rest within these walls. The candle burns a little lower, its light still steady, still warm. Shadows shift slightly along the stone, never abrupt, always slow. The quiet remains unbroken, deepening gently as the night moves forward. And as I sit there, in this small chamber touched by candlelight and calm, I feel the castle not as a vast structure of stone and towers, but as a place of many quiet rooms like this one, each holding its own small warmth, its own gentle stillness, as the storm continues softly beyond. I remain seated in the quiet chamber, the candle still burning with its gentle, steady light. And as the moments pass, my awareness begins to drift outward once more, not toward movement or action, but toward sound. The storm, which had softened into the background, slowly returns to my attention, not as something harsh or demanding, but as a distant presence that surrounds the castle in a wide and patient way. I do not rise immediately. Instead, I sit still and listen. At first, it is only the faint tapping of rain, barely noticeable against the quiet of the room. It reaches me through layers of stone and timber, softened and shaped by distance. It no longer feels like the rain I walked through earlier, no longer cold or pressing. Here, it is something gentler, something that belongs to the night itself, like a slow and steady breath moving across the land. After a time, I stand and move toward the narrow window, set deep within the wall. The opening is small, framed by thick stone, and I step close, resting my hand lightly against the cool surface as I look outward. The glass, if present, is uneven, softening the shapes beyond, turning the outside world into something blurred and quiet. The night stretches beyond the walls, dark and wide, filled with the steady motion of rain. I can see it more clearly now, faint lines drifting downward through the dim light that escapes from the castle. The drops catch the glow for a brief moment, then disappear into the darkness below. It is a slow, continuous movement, without urgency, without end. Somewhere in the distance, a low roll of thunder moves across the sky. It is not sharp or sudden, but deep and gradual, like a long echo traveling through unseen hills. It reaches the castle softly, passing through the stone in a way that feels more like a vibration than a sound. I feel it more than I hear it, a quiet presence that fades just as gently as it arrives. I remain at the window, watching. The wind shifts from time to time, pressing lightly against the outer walls. When it does, the sound of the rain changes slightly, becoming fuller for a moment before settling again. It moves along the surface of the castle, around its towers and along its walls, finding its path without resistance. The structure does not fight it. It simply stands steady and unmoving, allowing the storm to pass as it has passed many times before. Below, though I cannot see it clearly, I sense the courtyard where I walked earlier. The stones there will be shining now, reflecting whatever light reaches them. Water will be gathering in the shallow spaces, forming quiet pools that ripple gently with each drop. The stables will be closed, the animals settled, their movements small and calm. The gates remain shut, the world beyond held at a distance until morning. I step back slightly from the window and sit once more, letting the sounds come to me rather than seeking them. The chamber holds the storm at a comfortable distance, allowing it to be heard without being felt. The candle continues to burn, its flame steady despite the shifting air outside, and its light creates a small, warm center within the room. The rain forms a pattern, one that does not repeat exactly, yet never feels unfamiliar. It moves across the roof above, down the walls, into unseen channels and spaces. It taps softly, then more fully, then softens again. Each change is gradual, flowing into the next without interruption. Listening to it requires no effort. It simply fills the quiet. Occasionally, another sound joins it, a faint creak from somewhere within the structure, the natural settling of wood as it responds to the damp air. It is not a troubling sound, only a reminder that the castle is alive in its own way, adjusting gently to the night, to the weather, to time itself. I lean back slightly, allowing my body to rest more deeply, and close my eyes for a moment, letting the sound of the storm become clearer without the need to see it. The rain, the distant thunder, the soft movement of air, all blend into a single calm presence. There is no sharpness in it, no urgency. It is simply there, steady and enduring. Time moves quietly in such moments. The candle burns a little lower, the flame dipping and rising in its slow rhythm. The air remains warm, holding back the chill of the storm beyond the walls. The chamber feels unchanged, stable, while outside, everything continues in its gentle motion. I open my eyes again and look once more toward the window, though now the darkness beyond feels even softer, less defined. The storm has become something familiar, something that no longer draws attention, but rather supports the quiet, like a distant companion that keeps watch over the night. After some time in the quiet of the chamber, I find myself drawn once more toward the heart of the castle, where the warmth gathers most gently. I move back through the corridor, my steps soft against the worn stone, guided again by the small, steady lights placed along the walls. The castle feels even quieter now than before, as though it has settled deeper into the night. Doors remain closed, voices are fewer, and each sound seems to rest more fully in the stillness. When I return to the great hall, the change is subtle but clear. The space is no longer filled with the gentle movement of evening tasks. Much of it has already been set aside. The tables stand mostly empty now, their surfaces clean and calm in the dim light. A few candles continue to burn, though their flames are smaller, their presence softer. The hall feels wider, more open, as if it is slowly releasing the weight of the day. The hearth, however, remains steady. I walk toward it, drawn by the quiet glow that reaches out across the floor. The fire has settled into a deep glowing bed of embers, with a few low flames moving slowly between the logs. It no longer shifts with bright energy, but rests in a calm, enduring warmth. The light it gives is softer now, more even, casting long, gentle shadows that stretch across the walls and along the beams above. I take a seat nearby, close enough to feel the heat without being touched directly by it. The warmth is different at this hour. It is not the lively warmth of gathering and conversation, but a deeper, quieter kind, steady and reassuring, like something that will remain through the night without needing attention. There are only a few others in the hall now. One figure sits further along the bench, leaning slightly forward, hands resting together, gaze lowered toward the fire. Another rests back against a pillar, eyes half closed, not asleep, but fully at ease. No one speaks. There is no need. The silence here is shared, not empty, filled gently by the presence of others who, like me, have come to rest in the calm of the fire. I settle more comfortably, letting my body soften into stillness. The heat reaches me slowly, moving through the air in quiet waves. My hands, now fully warmed, rest easily, no longer seeking the fire's closeness. My breathing slows, matching the unhurried rhythm of the flames. The sound of the storm outside continues, but here it feels distant, softened by the thick stone and the depth of the hall. The rain still falls, its steady pattern now blending almost completely with the quiet crackle of the embers. Occasionally, a piece of wood shifts within the fire, releasing a soft sound, a brief movement of light, before settling again into stillness. I watch the fire without focusing on any one detail. The glowing embers hold a deep, steady color, while the small flames rise and fall in slow, natural motions. They do not rush. They do not demand attention. They simply move, guided by something quiet, and constant. Time feels different here. It is not measured by moments or tasks, but by the gradual changes within the fire, the slow settling of the logs, the soft dimming and brightening of embers, the gentle shifting of light across the floor. Each moment flows into the next without effort, without interruption. The hall itself seems to breathe with the fire. The shadows along the walls move slowly, stretching and softening, never sharp, never sudden. The high beams above hold the darkness in calm layers, while the light below remains warm and steady. Everything feels balanced, held in a quiet harmony. I become aware of the small details around me, the faint scent of smoke carried upward, the subtle warmth in the air, the quiet presence of the others nearby. Even the space between sounds feels full, not empty, as though the silence itself has weight and comfort. My thoughts slow. There is no need to follow them, no need to hold on to any particular idea. They pass gently, like the movement of the fire, rising and fading without effort. The body rests, the mind follows. Another soft roll of thunder passes in the distance, barely reaching the hall, more felt than heard. It blends seamlessly with the rhythm of the night, adding depth without disturbance. The storm continues, but it no longer feels separate from this space. It feels like part of it, part of the larger quiet that holds everything together. I lean slightly closer to the warmth, not out of need, but simply to feel it more clearly. The heat is steady, comforting, never overwhelming. It reaches outward, touching the edges of the room, holding the night at a gentle distance. No one moves much now. The figures nearby remain still, each resting in their own quiet way. The hall, once a place of gathering and motion, has become a place of rest, of quiet presence, where nothing is required and nothing is expected. The fire continues to glow. The storm continues to fall.